Is that the motion be agreed to, and I give the call to the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, you'd be familiar with this analogy. 2003, on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, George Bush stepping out behind, in front of, I should say more correctly, a banner that says "Mission Accomplished," and that is what it felt like listening to the member for Moore giving his erudite speech right then. But I'm afraid, Deputy Speaker, the right to disconnect wasn't the right of the government to disconnect from economic reality. But that is what we just heard. We heard boastfully about the direction of wages under this government, but unfortunately there's a brutal reality. If you actually adjust for inflation, real wages in Australia haven't gone up for over the past 15 years, including under this government. In fact, we've consistently trailed the OECD average. That is not something to be proud of, and it shows how much work needs to be done to boost wages in this country, because around this nation right now, so many Australians feel like no matter how hard they work, they aren't getting ahead. And no matter what this government does, and no matter how much they crow about their achievements, we aren't seeing that materialise or improve in people's lived conditions. And you just need to look at what's happening with small business. We have record small business insolvencies, which is a tragedy, not just because of the impact it obviously has on the owners, but small business is the gateway for so many young Australians to go on and get their first job. It's the pathway where they get their first foot on the ladder of economic opportunity. And, of course, it's a pathway they then go on and get their next job as part of their pathway to success in life. And it's because this government is focused more on what they need to do to feed the outcomes for union bosses, rather than improving workers' wages. And we saw this very explicitly. An article in the Daily Telegraph today did an analysis looking at what has been happening with union bosses' wages over the past 5 years. It showed that CFMEU officials' wages have gone up by 26%. Meanwhile, construction workers' wages in the same time has gone down by around 5%. That is not something to boast about, Member for Moore. It suggests that this government's policy is trickle-up economics towards union officials at the expense of workers' wages. It suggests to me very clearly that we have a problem where the government's focus is not focused on what it needs to do to boost the interests of Australian workers, but, of course, to their political patrons. And we've seen this in other areas of the legislative agenda of this government. Just look at what they've done with penalty rates. We literally had an industry association apply to increase the base rate of wages in the retail sector by 35%. 35% increase in the base award rate. But Labor wasn't going to have that. Because if they had that, what would it have done? It would have cut out the union interests in the decision-making and power of wages and penalty rates. So what did they do? They outlawed a pathway to increase the wages for retail workers because it would have undermined the power of their unions and increased the power of wages for workers. This is the disgraceful priorities of this government. They are focused more on what they need to do to boost union bosses' pay at the expense of workers. And you're seeing this now. Another report in the Australian Financial Review just today. Quoting Labor's multi-employer bargaining regime has received a dual setback with the collapse of the mining industry's first negotiations. This was the big crow, Deputy Speaker, out of their first Jobs and Skills Summit. Remember that? We had a tax hike talkfest recently. They had their Jobs and Skills Summit at the end of 2022, and their first big outcome from that was the multi-employer bargaining regime. Well, the Australian Financial Review can reveal that almost all the air conditioning manufacturers that signed up to the first multi-employer bargaining agreement are now seeking to exit the deal in the face of opposition from a rival union. After bargaining for 12 months for one agreement for critical site supervisors in New South Wales, the Colliers Staff and Officials Association last week opted to instead pursue single agreements. During the 5 bargaining meetings held since last year, neither side could reach consensus on any potential terms. And then, of course, the other parties, as part of a workforce agreement, multi-employer agreement in the mining sector, said it was unworkable. Deputy Speaker, the collective noun for clowns is a chuckle. And, of course, I think we need to officially adopt, as part of this parliamentary procedure, the collective noun for multi-employer bargaining agreements is a chuckle, because it is turning into a joke. Under this government, the focus of industrial relations laws is how to boost the interests of union bosses at the expense of workers, but there is nothing to chuckle about, Deputy Speaker.
And I thank the member for Goldstein.